Hey everyone, welcome to this new moon Sidereal astrology forecast for the new moon on Friday, October 16th, 2020. All right, so the new moon in Virgo, if you're expecting me to say Libra just then, be sure to check out the link down below. We are using the visible sky called True Sidereal Astrology, which does change the signs from mainstream astrology. All right, so second new moon in Virgo. We had the last month's new moon here as well. So this is all about taking a step in the right direction when it comes to our improvement-oriented side. Virgo has been a time and will be about developing our more refined self, right? Virgo the maiden is about the side of ourself that is composed. It is about creating good personal development in the sense of good routines, good habits, good structures, right? And putting in the work in order to facilitate these structures so we can have more flexibility and adaptability in our life. And this is particularly the case with Mercury now retrograde during the new moon. Mercury being the ruler of Virgo, retrograde suggests that this is a month of making sure that we are flexible as possible in the process. Good to, of course, set new intentions with the new moon, but particularly in the context of going back and maybe reworking things, rethinking things, re-editing, redoing, right? Giving as much flexibility for that experimentation process during this retrograde. Now, the new moon is going to be forming a T-square. It's going to be opposite up to Mars, the planet of our drive and our initiative. So good to find balance with that side of ourselves. If there's not enough drive and action, incorporating some of that. If there's too much, being non-attached and mindful of that side of ourselves can help balance that out a little bit. But this will be squaring up to the outer planets that have been involved with all of the major changes and restructuring that we've seen this year. The stellium we've had between Jupiter, Saturn, and Pluto is going to be forming a square with the new moon. So this is good to challenge ourselves in the sense of empowerment, maybe facing some fears, doing some things that require that self-empowerment. Also maybe taking some time with things, thinking about things in the long road, and also taking that patient and disciplined perspective. But with the square to Jupiter, also being aware that there are opportunities this year. There's this expansion to our perception taking place, and it is good to see those opportunities and maybe build towards some of those as well. All right, so let's take a look at all of this here in more detail when we return. All right, so here's the chart for the new moon. Here are the constellations. We are using the visible sky. As you can see here, the constellations are different sizes, which is not usually used in mainstream astrology. So you will notice the signs are different. For example, in mainstream astrology, they are saying that this new moon is in Libra. But if you were to look up at the visible sky, you will see the new moon in the constellation of Virgo. So if you are new to True Sidereal, definitely check out that link down below for more information. All right, but here's the new moon in the constellation of Virgo, the maiden. It's the second new moon that we've had here. So the last month's new moon was here as well. We've already had a lot of concentration of energy into this. And by the way, the new moon will be at 15:58 Eastern time of the Americas, but for all intents and purposes around Friday. So what is Virgo the maiden? So this is the side of ourself. It's the qualities of ourself that you could say is the maiden, the side that is composed, wants to do things that require a bit of self-discipline and personal development and striving towards maybe some sort of ideal of self, right? To refine the self into the quote-unquote perfected human, right? So obviously there is no perfection, and that's why, of course, Virgo is opposite Pisces as a reminder that it is important to still release what's outside of our control and realize that the only perfection is in the spiritual realm, right? But in the physical realm, we can strive towards that. And that's what Virgo represents. How can we put in the work? How can we put in self-discipline? How can we create good routines, good habits, right? Do this kind of nitty-gritty, detail-oriented, refining energy to develop things in our life. So great to set intentions around this. Are there some things we can do the work with? Are there some things that do require that composure, that self-discipline? Are there things we can improve? Maybe improve ourselves, improve our lives, improve our routines or our habits, right? Our day-to-day energies, Right, this could be a great way of working with this fresh new lunar month. So the energies will be dying down as we do approach Friday. So do keep in mind that is going to be the ending phase still of the previous cycle. So as we approach Friday, it is still good to complete things in the same context. Because the last new moon was in Virgo, we're still completing things in this area, but it is going to be a fresh new start with it. And it is usually a lot easier to work with, generally speaking, because it's further into the constellation. So the first one, the one we had a month ago, was brand new energy. It takes some time to acclimate to it, but we have acclimated a little bit up to this point. And so it is this now fresh new start with this kind of energy. And then from Friday onwards, just give it a little bit of time. This is the lowest energy phase of the lunar cycle. And so we're just slowly building momentum, slowly building some new intentions with this fresh new start of this Virgo refined and improvement-oriented side of ourselves. All right, so with this new moon, we do have Mercury retrograde, which is particularly important for this new moon because Mercury is the ruler of Virgo. So anytime you want to get more information on a particular new moon, you look at the ruler or dispositor of that sign. And so in this case, Mercury in Virgo adds to the Virgo energy, but retrograde makes this a month of really creating the flexibility. You know, Virgo is a mutable sign anyways. So Virgo, through creating good habits and good structures in our routines, that does lead to more flexibility in our life, right? Like if we've ever picked up a habit, it's like it just becomes more routine. It just becomes more habitual. And we don't have to think about it as much. So it is a constellation of, as we do improve and refine and do these things, it makes more flexibility in our life. We can do it more without thinking. It can happen a little bit more automatically. And so this is what we want to do during this new moon, is really create as much flexibility as possible while we develop the energy. So in other words, with Mercury retrograde, things change, right? Ideas change, concepts change, our routines change. And so we want to make sure that we are as flexible as possible during this next lunar cycle. Now, it is a new moon, so it is a good time to set new intentions. And it is a good time during Mercury retrograde to do things anyways. In the mainstream channels, we hear a lot of avoiding things during retrogrades, particularly with Mercury. But that's not necessarily what this is about. This is about experimenting. It's a great time to experiment with new routines, experiment with new habits, maybe go back and redo some things that we were already working on or thinking about or putting in that self-discipline into. So great to do this stuff, but with flexibility. So have a plan A, B, C, and D. Like I said, things are changing during the retrograde, but we can learn so much during the retrograde. We can go back and relearn so much, and it makes it a great time for this stuff. So great to move forward, set some new intentions with as much flexibility and adaptability as possible, and creating good habits and good routines can facilitate that process. Now, the new moon is forming a T-square with the outer planets that have been involved with a lot of the major changes we've seen this year, since January in particular. And it's also going to be opposite up to Mars, who's also retrograde in Pisces. So let's talk about the Mars first, because this is perhaps the most important thing in the sense that this is on the same spectrum. It's in opposition. So while we are doing the work, we are doing these day-to-day things and, all this earthy kind of energy, we always want to balance that out with more receptive energy, right? With Mars retrograde in Pisces, this has been very important for the past few months to have this more receptive approach to where we're putting our action. So it is great, obviously, in life, like I said, set intentions, take action, but in such a way that we are turning inward a little bit, right? Mars in Pisces is a reminder that while it is good to have these needs, these goals, these drives, to also make sure that we are receptive in the process, that there is something much larger at play. There's all these things that are outside of our control in life, just generally speaking, that we can be a little bit more receptive to. So certainly a time of focusing on what we do have control over, which is essentially ourselves and our own habits and our own actions, but at the same time surrendering what's outside of our control, right? Doing our best to be receptive. There's something greater here we're not seeing yet with the Pisces energy, and so we just want to make sure that we are checking in with that, checking in with our intuition, checking in with the cosmic flows of life. Where's the energy moving in life and how can we align to that, right? And that can lead to more peace and more spiritual well-being, and all in all help us develop more of this earthy stuff much more healthfully, right? Because if we get too neurotic, too controlling, too much into that physical realm, and there isn't enough of that mindfulness and peace and alone time or rest or creative time or doing things important to us on a soul level, or just simply, again, having that more surrendering approach, then obviously we can't get as much done, right? We can get burnt out, or, things won't flow or whatever. So good to find that balance between doing and being, between action and inaction, between the physical world and the spiritual world, right? This is, I think, a very important energy, which already has been important, but particularly for this next new lunar month. Now, the T-square, the actual squares up to the outer planets of Saturn, Pluto, and Jupiter, these planets have been the ones involved with a lot of the restructuring we've seen collectively and personally in our lives this year. A lot of deep energy with Pluto, a lot of patience required with Saturn, but also some hopefulness and inspiration with Jupiter. So the important thing here with this is that we are actually in the third quarter phase of this cycle between these planets. What I mean by that is that 9 months ago, so January of this year, we had the new moon conjunct these outer planets. And that's what kickstarted this year of 2020 being transformative and deep and restructuring and all of this. Then we had our first quarter phase after that. So the new moon that was 3 months after that, which was in the April time period. And so this was the first major challenges of that, right? And so we were integrating, challenging ourselves towards that. Then we had the new moon that was opposite those back in July, which was about finding some sort of balance with that, and maybe even some things culminating around that time. But now the third quarter phase is that we're already seasoned. We're kind of like veterans in this year, let's say. So the energy does tend to be a little bit easier to work with, even though it is a square. But the square is prompting us to make some changes, maybe challenge ourselves with these new beginnings in such a way that we can think back to what has been restructured in our life, and how can we now set some intentions and take some actions in conscious and constructive ways that will help further develop these things, right? And this will be in part with Pluto about maybe facing some fears, doing some things that involve personal empowerment, self-empowerment, right? Making changes there, practicing non-attachment so that we can allow for these changes, because Pluto shows us what is false and what we're still holding on to and trying to control. But as we are more non-attached, it allows the energy to flow a little bit, and then we can do the things that are more deeply important to us, right? And what really matter to us, because the fear and the attachment can actually not be what we truly want. With a square to Saturn, good to remember that this stuff is still taking time. It is still a year of patience, of discipline, seeing the long road. So if there is anything you do want to take time with, put in some of that patience with, some persevering energy, that long road energy, right? This is also great during the square to challenge ourselves with. And then all in all with Jupiter, just seeing that, especially with all these planets in Sagittarius as well, that yes, this is a year of changing perception. And when our perception changes and broadens and stretches, we start to become aware of more. And so this is a year of seeing maybe potentials, maybe opportunities, maybe things we're inspired about, maybe just things we can be a little more open-minded about that we can also build towards. So all in all this restructuring we've seen this year, this could be a nice step in the right direction to set some intentions with, through time, through personal empowerment, and through stretching our perspective to further develop these energies as we essentially close out this lunar cycle, this yearly cycle associated with these planets, which will be between now and January. And then we'll have a fresh new beginning, a new cycle starting from that time onward. All right, everyone. So that is the new moon in a nutshell. Pretty straightforward, actually. So new beginnings, setting new intentions is great. As we approach Friday, completing things from the previous cycle and slowly building momentum into the new cycle. It's all about refinement, doing the things that involve improvement, striving towards self-discipline, a quote-unquote perfection of things to create some good structure, some good routines, some good habits, but structure in our life nonetheless, so that we can have more flexibility. And so to do that, it is good to go back, maybe rethink some things, redo some things, right? Have a plan A, B, C, and D so we can adapt to all these new things that are coming out of this cycle. Balancing that with receptivity, action, and inaction, doing the physical, but also the spiritual, and surrendering what's outside of our control is very important with this. And then anything that has been restructuring in your life from this year, that has been empowering, maybe it's taking some time, it is also stretching your perspective. This could be great to set intentions with. These squares, although we hear them talked about a lot in astrology as just being challenging, it's actually that we want to challenge ourselves, and it becomes super constructive times. It's times like this that things are really built, either in our personal development or in our lives, because we have the push and we have the drive and we have the opportunity really to ground and implement these things. All right, so everyone have a fantastic new moon. Thank you again so much for watching. If you're an MTZ Insider, you are getting this video first. If you're on YouTube and not yet signed up for MTZ Insiders, definitely check out that link down below. You can sign up to get these videos before they're released on YouTube, as well as other videos as well. But again, have a great one. Thank you again for all of your support, and I'll see you all next time for the next Sidereal update. Take care.